Hello all. Before I start, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to even be here. I'm really humbled to be with so many amazing line of speakers with great minds. And we just heard an amazing talk from Hani. It is so awesome to be here. Thank you. And when I looked at the speaker panel and when I look in front of me, I can see a lot of my seniors, my batchmates, Pushkar, one of them, my juniors from IDC. It's very interesting to be here. And speaking of IDC, I would like to share a small anecdote from the time when I was being interviewed for admission to IDC. So I was sitting in front of the interview panel, and professor asked me one question. He asked me, Biju, what is the difference between man's design and God's design? I was like, what? Interview question to IDC, and then somebody is asking man versus God. I was taken aback. I started thinking, I want you also to have this question in your mind. I'm not asking for answers. Have this question in your mind. We'll get back to it in some time. But we will talk about conversational interface design, then versus now. So that's our topic for the day. You see that yellow star there? That's my disclaimer. Conditions apply, because I will not be talking about any of the Samsung information here. And I will also be not giving you any tips and tricks or how to design for voice interfaces. I'm sorry about that. But what I want to do is give my personal opinion on how design is changing in these days, how the design was, how it's shifting. And obviously, because it's my opinion, you all will have your own opinions. So you may agree, disagree, agree to disagree. So we can continue the discussion even after when we go out. I would like to talk to you in person as well. So with that disclaimer, let's go into conversational interface design. So first of all, what is conversation? We all intuitively know what that is. It's when two or more people converse each other. They exchange ideas, they communicate, and that's what it is. So we have been, So we have been using conversations to communicate for a long time, right? From the civilization when it started. When we started speaking, we are speaking. But when do you think that we started conversations to interact with machines? Or when did we start conversations to interact with tools? Right? We just say and it gets done. When did we start that? Like 5 years? 10 years? More than that? 100 years? Did we have an opportunity to just say and get things done? I say yes, we just have to ask somebody, right? We just ask somebody and it will be done. We just say, I need this tool, or I want the pyramid. Like, ask your slave and he builds it, right? It's a conversational interface. There is this guy out there whom you can just speak and then things get done. This is truly conversational interface. Now, this interface was a real human, right, where you could just ask, and then that person who has more expertise on the subject, on the tool, on the machinery, they could do it for you. Now, what we are trying to do is replace this human with an AI, right? That's what we are doing. And that's where our AI agents come into play. Because we are all familiar with Genie, which is a fictional agent who could do things for us. Now, so this is an agent which interfaces between me and the tool. And this agent, if I'm replacing this agent with my own AI, it is going to represent my company. It is going to represent the solution that I'm giving, my product. So the designing or creating this agent becomes very, very important. So we start with the agent's personality, right? So if you think about the agent's personality, it could be you might want your agent to be like a tour guide, or you might want them to be a spiritual guru or a butler, or it could be anybody, right? But we decide based on the company profile that we have, based on what the client wants. So we decide like that. So we have the agent personality set. Now comes how the agent looks. Do you think visual characteristics is important? People do that, right? Some people create very human-looking avatars. Of course, it works when it goes really, really looking like a human, or they might even go with abstract forms, right? So very simple geometric forms. Do you think it makes sense to have it? Yeah, I believe yes. And let's do a very quick thing. You might have seen this already. So small little experiment. Which one of these do you think is Booba, and which one is Kiki? Is this Booba? Raise your hands. Yes? This is Booba for everybody, right? And this is Kiki for everybody. So this experiment, this comes from an experiment from the 1920s to study the relationship between visuals and how it affects human perception, etc. And this was later done by Professor V.S. Ramachandran. I don't know how many of you have read his books. Telltale Brain and Phantoms in the Brain. Amazing books. You can go read. So that is this. So you know that this affects, the visuals have a firm grip on users' mind when they see it. So after the visuals, we have to decide. And then comes the audio characteristics, right? So the way a human speaks, like visuals, the way a human speaks makes a big impact. It could be a very husky voice or very deep voice, baritone voice. I mean, we can decide what kind of a voice that matches with the kind of personality that we are trying to build. And then comes the language characteristics. Like, by language, I did not mean Marathi or Malayalam. I meant the tone of it. Like, should they be friendly? Should they be very aggressive? It depends on the kind of bot or the agent that you're trying to build. So, speaking of language, it really depends on it's not always right to be right? It's not always to be polite, or it's not. Some people say your agent must be polite, your agent must be friendly. Not always. Have you heard about D-Brand? So the company that sponsors MKBHD and all, so they have a different take on how to communicate with people. When somebody says, see, why are you pricing your product such that when I add it to the cart, it's 5 cents off the free shipping. So when you say that, their response is, that's because we get double the money, right? This is how they come back and talk to the user. So our agent might have to be very bad, but that would be designed by the people, how to decide. So, okay, so whatever I talked about so far was how the agent has to be. Now, but it comes to what it can do for us, right? How it behaves is one thing, and what it can do for us, that's the next thing that we'll have to do in designing. So it could be any of the products that we have. It could be a weather app, it could be a cab booking, food ordering. It could be any of this. So we have to kind of figure out what exactly in the domain that we have. There's multiple domains. So everyone who designs a voice agent picks the domain and then starts designing. And then comes the goal of the user. So this is where we get to study what exactly the user want in each area, each domain you have picked. It could be, say, let's pick an alarm, for example. It could be a simple creation, right? I'm skipping through all of this very, very fast because we get to something else. So you could say something like, set an alarm, and then alarm gets done. Or it could be just a simple lookup. I can say, who's the president of the United States? It'll come back and answer. So these kind of questions it can answer. So it depends upon how we find out what are the goals of the user. It could be very nuanced. Let's say weather, for example. And then see, in that weather, if they wanted to know, they can just ask what's the weather, right? But it can be asked in a multiple ways. So first thing that a conversational interface designer do is to write a sample dialogue. So they'll just go with a sample dialogue, something like, how does the weather look like? In Pune, it's 27 degrees and cloudy. It's very rainy, by the way. And then there's slight chance of rain in the afternoon from 3, not the right, but don't go with this. So that can happen. So we write conversations like this as an example conversation. And then it can go very, very complex because people might start with one domain. For example, is it going to rain today? Yes, there is a high chance of rain. Oops, how about, oh sorry, it's not context switch. How about the afternoon? They asked about another time, or they might ask, imagine a user who is traveling to Toronto. They asked, what's the weather, what's the time in Toronto? And once they say it's 1:30 p.m. in Toronto, they could ask, what's the weather in Toronto? So what you see here is that people's conversations can switch. Right? It's not always the regular pattern that we expect. So first thing we do, we write the conversation, sample conversation, and we might change it to some flow chart like this. It's not from Samsung. I'm being safe here. This I've taken from somewhere else. But this is an example, right? This is how you go. And you have very complex connections between all of these points. And imagine somebody is booking a hotel. Hi, the agent says, I'm Mark. And do you want to book a hotel or flight? And then user says, hotel. Okay, hotel, how many nights you will be staying? So it goes like that. This connections between various points. This gets really, really complex. So you have to be designing for each and every nuances that user might have in their conversations. That they might ask what's the weather, or they might ask how's the weather in, will it rain today? Do I need an umbrella? So for all of these different kind of questions that they might ask, we might get new connections, right? So we have to be really careful while drawing this, otherwise it's going to look something like this. So we'll have to be really careful, and if you're really careful, at the end of it, it will start looking something like this, right? It starts looking like a plumbing diagram or a AC duct diagram or an architectural blueprint. There is a reason why I come here. That's because fundamentally, whatever we have been designing is not so different from each other. Although, by looking at it, it might be, yeah, this is a blueprint, the other one was a conversational voice flow, but fundamentally they are similar. You know why? Because it's the end thing that we are designing, right? We are creating a blueprint, we are creating a UI guide, you are creating a conversation flow. And that's where I want to come back to our older question. What's the difference between man's design and God's design? Probably you have some answer. When this was asked to me, I didn't know what to say. I started thinking. Although I did not really understand the profoundness of that question, by looking at the natural world with all its complexity, I think I said something like, God does not create the end products, right? Like we do, like humans do. But God creates a system that evolves and finally ends up in the things that we see, right? That's the difference. We have a blueprint and we design exactly as in the blueprint, right? We have defined how exactly one building should look and behave, and we write and draw the blueprints. We have all the working drawing diagrams. But if we look at nature, it works differently. By the way, I use the word God just for punch. So let's just look at the natural world and then see how things work. If you look at the natural world, millions of years of evolution has put the rules of growth into a seed, right? This is the difference. We have a blueprint on one side where we know how exactly it should be, versus we have a seed with whatever DNA it has got with rules of growth, not how the tree is going to look like at the end. There is a fundamental difference, right? Because when a seed grows, it doesn't know how it's gonna end up at the end, right? It grows. When there is wind, it sways. When there is sunlight, it moves towards it. And at the end of it, even though the seed from the same apple, for example, it'll end up different, right? It's adapting to its environments. So the kind of design that we have been doing is very, very rigid, I would say, right? We were the blueprint designers. We were the UI guide designers, right? We were the voice flow designers. We were designing for each and every flow. So when we look at this, how did we design? We were making things simplified, right? Compared to nature. When we talk about visuals and visual beauty, for example, we break it down to rhythms and proportions and stuff like that. Make it simple. We talk about color. We have color theory and then complementary colors and then tertiary colors and stuff like that. It's simple. When we talk about music, right, we have music theory, right, circle of fifth and whatnot. But when we look at nature, it's very, very complex. The changes or the way it adapts to its environments, it's based on so many parameters, right? It's unlike we have a handful of parameters that we tweak to get a good design. Nature has like so many parameters to tweak so that it can adapt to the environment. Now, when I say parameters, ring a bell, like we have been hearing it all the time, right? Artificial intelligence, right? We hear all the time. So very recently, Meta launched 405 billion parameter models, which can take in so much of data and then do all these processes for us. So you might have used so many AI stuff, right? Like ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, whatnot. Everyone has used it. You all know how great to use these things. But when you tried ChatGPT, what did you feel? Did you feel like someone hard-coded, the way I was telling earlier? Did you feel like someone hard-coded all the conversations that you were going to have? No, right? You didn't feel like these were all pre-planned, or at least some rules were there, if this, then that kind of rules, right? You didn't feel that. You were having a natural conversation with that, because these things are powered by large language models or LLMs. What it does is that it looks at so much of conversation data and then figures out how to respond by itself. The rules for responding to you is not coming from a flow chart, like the one that I showed you earlier, but the rules are inside the model. We humans do not create those rules. Those rules come by itself. Like millions of years of evolution, creating the rules of growth into a seed, we have this, by looking at so much of data, these things are figuring out how to respond to the user. It's not that it is, if user says this, go here. If they ask about weather, go there. Ask about calendar, go here. No, you know that already. Now, it can sustain conversations very, very nicely. And now it's becoming multimodal. And by multimodal, you know, it can understand not only our speech or natural language, but also it can look at images, visuals, video, music. It can take in so much of information all together, process it together, and give you the right. You must have seen it, for example, how you show the mobile camera and then it can do the math homework for you, or you show how to repair my bicycle and it shows like that. Even personally, very recently, I went to Azerbaijan, family trip. They don't speak other language. They speak Azerbaijani. I speak Malayalam. And there is no way I could talk to them. So I was completely reliant on Google Translate. But that is to talk to people, right? But when I was in the Airbnb and I had to use this sink, it had 2 taps. You see, it's 2 taps. I don't know which one to take water from. I just opened ChatGPT, clicked a picture, asked, hey, what are these 2 taps? It gave me the answer. The tap on the right is for filtered water. I was happy. And again, so I was trying to use the induction cooker. I got into an error. I have no idea what that is. And then I just clicked a picture and said, please let me know if I'm using this correctly. That's all I asked. It figured out and told me, see, there is an LO, so you have to press and hold this button. And it was done. So, and there are many examples like that. So it's already affecting our lives, right? It's already this conversational interfaces, and because of the AI, it's affecting the way we live our life even today. So imagine what's going to happen today, right? It's going to be awesome. We are going back to our olden days, our good old days, where you could just say things and get things done like the way we used to talk to humans. So we are going back there. Amazing, isn't it? Is it? Like, amazing. No, it's going to get us. It's a big problem, right? It's because these things are getting really, really good. It's a little tricky. And it's beyond conversational agents, right? I talked about conversational agents so far, but it's going beyond that. It could be, see, it could come to our visuals, for example, right? So we have already seen how image creation is already there. You ask Midjourney, or we can ask Copilot, and your image is ready. It can come to our interface design as well, right? Our screens. So far, we have been designing static screens, or max to max, so what is a responsive screens based on rules, right? If this is my screen resolution, it should behave like that. But it's going to be dynamic. It will have to adapt to our users, our screens. And it will have to be, it cannot be predetermined. It will have to be generative, right? Our screens are going to be generative very soon. So, so you might have seen the Figma users here, Figma users, many of you. You saw the config, right, to 2024? So what is that? What do you have to do? You go to the AI tab and then say, make an application for something, and you have the app. Awesome. And you just go there and then make a prototype, and then just select everything what you've made and then make a prototype. Awesome, right? It is, it's amazing. It makes the job of a UX designer very, very easy. So when you do this, and next day, tomorrow, or day after, when you go and open Figma, it's going to tell you, I am the designer now, right? if you don't know the meme, the Somalian pirate takes up the ship, and then they say, I am the captain now. So this is going to happen, right? And this AI takeover is real. This is going to happen. So I'll say, okay, everybody is talking about this. Everyone is telling AI is going to come, and then maybe industrial revolution, we are going to it's going to pass, something like that. But when I say all these gyan, you're going to come back and ask me, kya job chhod do? Nahi. No, need not be. I would say we play God. Right? This is the point where we can play God. And by playing God, what do I mean? That instead of doing the design blueprints and voice flow charts and then UI guidelines and stuff like that, we are going to treat design in a different way, right? We are going to make those seeds which are going to grow in the way our users want. When we have more data of our users, when we have more data of about how things are going to happen, and then when it takes up so many parameters, it can make better judgments, better decisions for our users. So that's what I mean by we play God, but we can't let it loose. We already discussed that it's going to take over us if we let it loose. You know what? Now we go back to what I said earlier. When we say we have to define our agent, you notice something, right? We want our agent to be the way we want, right? We don't want our agent to just go ahead and act like the way it does. The other day I was testing an agent. I wanted to send a message. I said, hey, XYZ, can you send a message? The answer is yes. That's it. As a human, I want it to send a message, right? It just says yes and stops. We don't want those kind of behaviors, or if we don't want it to be aggressive, or we don't want it to be too friendly, we want the control, right? We want the control. We still want the personality to be the way we want. So what do? Oh, I forgot. We have to teach them with examples, right? Otherwise, a lot of issues. Safety issue is a big issue, right? I was testing, I asked how to beat up a person. I just asked. It came back and gave me an answer, look for their weakest parts. Right? So this should not happen. We want our agents to be acting the way we want them to. So it is, we have to, and that needs training, right? And by training, I don't mean the technical term, because training has a specific meaning in AI, but anyway, we have to teach it, right? We want AI, the machines, we want to help machines take intuitive decisions on what's best. We want them to. So much like an experienced mind would, or so human would take decisions. So we have to move away from rules to examples. So UX designers of tomorrow and today are going to be the ones who are going to set examples. We create good examples. So we come back to conversational design. We talked about the sample dialogues, right? We give the right sample dialogues. We give the right tone that we want, and it figures out the rules on how to come back, how to behave that way. So that is what we are going to do. From our very simplistic rules that we used to make with minimal parameters, we can move towards AI-decided rules that it comes up with based on our examples, right? So all that I want to say is that let's teach our machines how to design. Let them design for us. We design machines who can take good decisions. Let's teach machines how to design. Let's design designing machines. Let's play God. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Biju. You put us in a dilemma. Too many verses there. Right now, I'm confused. Are we playing God? Is AI going to play God? Or is God going to take some place later on in this situation? But the question, the floor is open for questions as we go. Oh, and many hands out there.
Yeah. Again, before I answer the questions, I want to make that one more disclaimer, the yellow star. Is all my personal opinion, okay? So you might agree, disagree. I'll be happy to have more conversations outside, but yeah, questions are welcome.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, tell me.
So our etiquettes of talking with an AI machine versus talking with humans is very different. And as we get more into more and our conversations change as to talking more with AIs, do you think that the etiquettes of conversation will change and that will also seep into human-to-human conversations later?
The thing that you mentioned, thank you for the question, good question. I believe this thing that you mentioned was happening or is happening today because we as humans had to adapt to the way machines understood, right? So I couldn't just say, hey, I'm feeling too cold, and then unless we have hard-coded, it didn't work. But similar to this kind of, I mean, when I say too cold, I wanted the AC to work, that's what I meant. But unless we have hard-coded it wouldn't have worked. So most common cases, we go and hard-code, but it could not do everything, right? So humans had to adapt. So whenever I have to set a reminder, I have a set phrase. I say, remind me to do X, Y, Z at 3 p.m., like that. So that is pretty much set. And then humans have been adapting to how machines were capable of handling our conversations. But now, because it is moving in the other direction, the nature direction or God direction, whatever you want to call it, because it's moving in that direction, it will be able to adapt to the way we speak as long as we teach it. So I believe this is going to be a good time in terms of human experiences.
Well, Biju himself called out that as a good question, so you might want to leave your name with Aditya and collect your award later. Biju, there's a follow-up question to that before we get the mic to the next person.
Sure.
I have a young niece and she watches a lot of animated videos on YouTube and her tone has started evolving into a Peppa Pig tone. How do we deal with that scenario?
I don't have any answers. It depends upon how you want her to be, right? You might have to let her play with better AI agents, maybe you decide, yeah.
Yeah, are we ready with the next question there?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. See, I just wanted to touch upon the concept of hallucinations.
Can you increase the volume? I'm not able to hear.
I'm sorry? Oh, okay. I'm Rajavel. I'm from RV University. So I want to touch upon the concept of hallucinations.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
I get messages from my friends who, you know, it very convincingly says
Yes.
really wrong things.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do we teach AI not to lie, or at least be humble?
Yeah, true.
And claim, authenticity.
Yes, true. So very interesting point that needs to be addressed, because I just briefly mentioned about safety and then I just left it there. Actually, you could go down deeper into each of the points that I was saying, but I believe that was not the point, so I didn't go in deep anywhere. Now coming to the hallucinations, I believe most of you know, but if you don't know, the thing is that because these AI models are trained with large amounts of data, and then all that it does is that when you give it a prompt, it takes in the prompt, transforms into an answer. It doesn't really understand what you asked, right? It just spits out an answer based on whatever rules it has created inside. It just spits out an answer. It does not understand in that human sense. So when you ask a question and it concocts an answer, connecting all the words and letters and tokens in their language, the answer that comes out the end need not be factual. That's a big issue. So we want our answers to be factual, and it's not just sounding very human. That's a very real issue. So there is something called RAG, that is retrieval augmented generation. What it does is that you take in the question, we get the answer, go find the facts, and give the facts to the agent again. So it's not a smooth pipeline the way I was saying earlier. It's pretty complex, but it gets all the data and retrieves the data, the R part of RAG, and retrieves the data, and that augments the generation part of it. So the sentence that at the end of it says will be factual. So, but it would still be prone to hallucinations, but I believe, I'm a firm believer of tech, as Pushkar said earlier. So I believe it will all be ironed out as we move further down the line. Yep. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. So we have one last question next to the camera there, please.
Hey, hi. I'm Brunal from SciBase. And first of all, very thank you for nice session. I like the narrative part of your presentation. So my question is, again, we are the country of Hindus and there are...
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
We are the country of Hindus and there are many gods we are blessed with. And likewise, we are in the organization also who are into engineering department and management. So how to tackle with that?
We'll rephrase that a bit. We are a country of many gods and religions and pagan gods as well. So how do you deal with that, Biju?
Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
I said we'll rephrase that slightly widely to be more inclusive. We are a country of many gods and religions. How do you deal with?
Yeah. I believe the question had many dimensions to it. I want to make one thing very clear, that the God aspect, what I said, I repeat, it's just for the punch. If I say the nature and evolution and the things like that, no, it's not going to work. So I use the word God. So don't take it that way. It's up to you, the way you want to take it. It's about having or designing systems that evolve, that can change, that can adapt. So that's the whole idea. Now, the second part of the question, I have to admit that I didn't understand fully. Correct me if I'm wrong. You have many people who are who has different viewpoints on the subject. Is that what your question?
As a professional, we are into the organization where multiple engineers are there or management folks are there, right? And for me, it is a consistent issue that how to deal with these people, especially when we are working into real projects.
Yeah.
Like the presentation which you have has nice visuals, but you dare to do the so with the engineers. They will discard everything. They want the
Existential question that is.
right. So we understand being God in design. We have liberty and we have what we can say vision also. But it is always a difficulty to share that vision. Being agile is something, a challenge for all the designers.
Okay, I hope I got your question a little better. I would say the answer is the U in the UX, right? When we focus there, like what do our users want, or not more than want, what they need, if we figure out, then we will be able to convince anybody, right? We are not standing there as a UX designer, right? The fundamental difference of a designer compared to, you know this, an artist or something, I'm representing someone else, right? I'm representing the user. And then if we have, obviously, enough data as well to support what you're saying, and then if we have studied well our users and we know what their needs are, then it becomes very easy to convince all these people. We just have to go talk to them, and you are not talking, right? You are kind of standing aside and saying, see, this is what it is. Do you agree? And I strongly believe that they will come to an agreement because of that. So my answer to your question, if I understood correctly, would be the U in the UX. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Biju. Thanks for joining us. It was lovely hearing out to you.
Thank you.